Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of our webcast, Connect with HSPC. So my name is Melanie McGregor, and I'm the chair of the Halton Suicide Prevention Coalition. Really excited for this episode because we are going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is training on suicide and specifically the LivingWorks ASIST training. So I've been teaching ASIST for almost 20 years, so it's something that's been a big part of my life, and it's really nice to connect with some other members of our Suicide Prevention Coalition who are also training ASIST in other training programs. So with us, we have Mikaela, Anne-Marie, and Cindy. So really dedicated members of our coalition, but it's nice to be able to have this conversation about what we're all doing in the training spaces and the impact that we're seeing. So first of all, I guess to start off with, I know when I think about almost 20 years ago when I became an ASIST trainer, why was that something that I was interested in? And I think for me, it was after I had taken the ASIST course and I felt so much more confident and so much more prepared to have conversations about suicide that I really wanted to help other people build those skills as well. But I'm interested, what was it about ASIST? And if anyone doesn't know, ASIST stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. It's a 2-day training around recognizing signs that someone may be having thoughts of suicide and then having conversations that will lead to a plan to help keep them safe for now. So I'm a little biased, but I think it's fabulous training. But I'm really interested, like, what was it for you that made you interested in becoming an ASIST trainer?
Well, I think for me, I'm a school board social worker. And again, after taking the ASIST training as a participant, I really saw sort of the utility of the program. So anybody can participate in the training. You don't have to have a professional background in mental health or counseling. It's an interest and a willingness to participate in creating a suicide safer community. So I wanted to become a trainer because I really wanted, across, the schools in my school board, I wanted to make sure that there were ASIST trained people in every single school so that we could better recognize, which students, which staff, which community members might be at risk of suicide, and to try to keep them safer.
Great. Cindy, yeah, go ahead.
I think for me, the majority of my career has been in youth justice environments where we know that the population of youth who are within the justice environment do have a heightened risk for suicide. So I was doing sort of in-service training that was specific to those environments. And then I recognized that it's not just that population that are high risk, and recognizing that taking a training like ASIST would allow me to expand the number of people and the different demographics and staff working in those environments with folks who are experiencing thoughts of suicide, and be able to provide that training, like Anne-Marie mentioned, to ensure that people had those skills and had the ability to provide that support to those who are needing it if they are having thoughts of suicide.
That's great. And I know Cindy and you and I have taught ASIST a couple of times together, so I've always really appreciated your passion for this field, for sure. Mikaela, how about you? What was it about ASIST that made you interested?
Yeah, so similar to how both yourself and Anne-Marie said, that after first taking the ASIST training is kind of where that interest was sparked, and that was the same for me. During that training, I found, prior to taking the ASIST training as a participant, suicide is just something that people do not like talking about. And for understandable reasons, it can be extremely difficult and extremely painful. And just during that training, I also became really close with a lot of the participants that I was taking the course with. And that kind of collective sense of community that I got throughout that training, that sense of safety that was provided from the other participants, and just feeling like I was learning tangible skills to support people. And I mean, I just wanted to try and increase the awareness. And again, you know, the more people that can provide that intervention, the more people that can recognize those signs and invitations, the more likely we're going to be able to save people or help people, get them support. And I guess that's kind of the main reason that I wanted to be an ASIST trainer, just to do what I could to help people in my community and to increase awareness about that there are ways to prevent suicide, and there's tangible ways that we can work together to do that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up about just acknowledging and being real about, yes, talking about suicide is not easy. It's a very difficult, it's a very painful subject. And so I know in my courses, that's something that I really try to acknowledge. I don't want participants to feel like, oh, you take ASIST and, you know, these conversations are going to be super easy. I don't find conversations about suicide are ever easy, but I find that through the training, one message I really try to give people is that this will hopefully help you feel more prepared when you have those skills and kind of that guide. But the conversations are always going to be difficult. So that's one key thing that I really try to emphasize. I'm interested, how about the rest of you? Are there key messages that you try to get across in your trainings or really emphasize for participants as big takeaways?
I think for me, one of the key takeaways, and I've experienced this personally, and I try to convey the message too, that you know, that you don't have to shoulder all of the responsibility, you know, if you encounter someone who's having thoughts of suicide. And the ASIST program actually really lends itself to that, because depending on your role in this person's life, you know, your job might be just to keep them safe for now, right? And safe for now until you pass them on to another caregiver, or whatever the next step is, you know, in terms of the intervention. And that for me, I think was I really felt a sense of relief, right? That, you know, that this wasn't something now that was my sole responsibility day in and day out. It's an intervention, it's you know, time limited and has next steps, which, you know, which is really helpful when you're creating a safety plan. You know, and the other piece that I've said before is that anybody can do this training, right? So the LivingWorks training, you know, they talk about an example in Limerick, Ireland, where they trained taxi drivers, right? I believe it was in Safe Talk, which is another of the LivingWorks programs, because the taxi drivers were finding that they were driving around late at night, and they decreased the number of suicide attempts in their community significantly. And so if a taxi driver in Ireland can be trained, anybody can be trained, right? So you don't have to necessarily have a, you know, like I said, a background in mental health or counseling. You have to have an interest in, you know, in being able to recognize and then, you know, and then help somebody who might be at risk of suicide.
That's great.
I would add to that exactly what you said around anybody can do this. And one of the key messages that I often try to empower those who are taking the ASIST training is that listening is your superpower. And sometimes that's really the only, you know, if that's all you can do is just listen to somebody who's struggling and talking to you about really being in a dark place and not wanting to live in that moment, that often the power that you hold is in your ability to just listen and let them, you know, have that space. So I really do, you know, encourage that, and that often, you know, folks who are feeling like they don't want to live any longer and have thoughts of suicide, it's really more about not necessarily not wanting to live, but not wanting to continue being in pain. And that emotional pain is really can be mitigated by just talking about it and allowing the person to say what's going on for them, and not feeling like you have to fix it in some way, but connecting them to somebody who can support them in getting through that pain.
That's great.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you as well, Cindy. And I think sometimes when we're taking the ASIST training, or when we're delivering the ASIST training, and because we are teaching a model that we're supposed to work our way through, and there are certain steps that we're kind of supposed to hit when we're supporting somebody. I also try to emphasize that, yes, there is a model. There are some certain steps that we want you to, go throughout the training or throughout an intervention, like asking directly about suicide. But we don't have to follow this prescriptive model when we are supporting somebody, because especially if we're supporting somebody that is close to us, if this is a family member, a loved one, a partner, a friend, whatever, it can be difficult to hear about their thoughts of suicide as someone that loves them, right? And we may get out of sync with them and just say, oh, but you have so many people that love you. When in reality, that's not where their head is at right now. They are in pain. And as Cindy said, we want to try and listen as best as we can and just be a listening ear for them. Obviously, confirming that they are directly thinking about suicide is an important piece of the model. But I try to emphasize to my participants that it's okay to get out of sync with somebody. It's just about getting back into sync and centering that person in the middle in that intervention, and not worrying about how we're feeling about it or how their thoughts of suicide are impacting us, but just being that ear for them and assisting them in accessing that support if they are willing to stay safe for now. But yeah, and also that it's okay to talk about suicide. It's okay to ask about suicide, because then we actually know what we're talking about. We're not talking about harming ourselves. We're not talking about doing something stupid. We're talking about, this is about suicide. And I think that's a really important thing that's emphasized in the course.
Yeah, for sure. And that was something that I found so shocking the first time that I took the program. Because I really thought, oh no, if we ask directly about suicide, are we not going to put that idea into somebody's head? Or, if they're not having thoughts of suicide, are they going to be offended or angry with us? And so, it's such a relief, for me to know that the literature says, no, absolutely not. And sometimes you can see an actual, like a relief in the person that you're speaking to during an intervention, because finally I can talk openly about this guarded secret that I've been carrying around, sometimes for a long time. So you can visibly see a change in somebody's demeanor when, like, how did you know, right? And how important it is to actually specifically say the words, are you having thoughts of suicide? Are we talking about suicide? Because that's what this intervention is about.
And I think I know, you get a group of ASIST trainers together and we can get into, great conversations about things we've seen in our courses and what people have learned. And I know that's a really common question I think that comes up, is people say, well, if you ask directly, are you going to make them mad? Are you going to offend them? Are you going to put that idea in your mind? And so I think that's one thing that the course really reassures people about is, this is a conversation that we're having. And if we're going to have a conversation about keeping someone safe from suicide, we do need to talk openly about suicide. And I think it's a new learning for participants, which is great. If that's a new learning for them, then that's something that hopefully they will take forward from that training. And I know I've seen like kind of those light bulb moments, I guess I call it, where people say, wow, this is really going to change the way that I do things. So there's moments that definitely stand out for me. So I'm interested, do the three of you, do you have moments that stand out for you as well, where you're like, I can see the light bulb going off here. I can see that this training is having an impact. What are some things that stick with you?
Because I know many of the participants through the school board, I often will get people who years later, right, will message me to say, Anne Marie, I met with somebody and I took out, my we call it a cheat sheet. It's like a little foldable guide that, you can keep in your wallet. And I did it and it worked and it's helpful. And, those kinds of experiences are huge. I know personally, like not a week after, taking the ASIST training, I had an intervention with a student that nobody knew was struggling. It was very interesting because the principal thought that something was off. He was in detention and thought something might be off, and asked if he would speak with me. And so fresh off my first assist training, I talked to him, and he was certainly sending out some of the, the invitations that, that we learned about in the program. And I, almost held my breath, and I said, are you having thoughts of suicide? And like the look on his face, he was shocked. And if I hadn't asked the question, right, if he had come to my office the week before or 2 weeks before, I wouldn't have asked the question in the same way. And, this was an intervention that literally, I think, was life-changing for him, because, he did get the help that he needed. And he was somebody who had been struggling silently for quite some time, right? So, that was my own light bulb moment for sure. But it is something that after an intervention, we do have people reaching back to us sometimes to talk about how, how it is gone, right, for them.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
I was just going to say, so I'm a fairly new assist trainer. I've only completed about 9 assist workshops as a trainer. So I'm still fairly new with the whole experience in general. But there was a training I did recently, a couple weeks ago, and there was a moment in the training where on the first day in the morning, we all sit in a circle and we kind of go around and share about experiences, and people start opening up. And that day, we went around the room. There was about 15 or 16 of us, and every single person had either had thoughts or attempts of suicide themselves, or they had lost somebody in their family, a very close friend. And as we were going around the room, people were starting to share more and more, and the other participants were starting to support the other people, and other participants were saying, thank you for sharing that, this person. This has now given me the courage to share my story about suicide. And in that moment, in that group, that was kind of a light bulb moment to me about how the training can really, really open those doors for people to talk about these things, and people feel safe enough to share their experiences and encourage other people to share their experiences. Because again, how someone who's having thoughts of suicide for a really long time may not be willing to open up until they're asked directly. It's kind of the same way in the training as well, where like people who've had experiences or losses of suicide in the past may not have really talked about it before, and it also gives them that space to do so. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what it made me think of. But
yeah, because suicide isn't a topic that we would talk about just in regular conversation. But often it's not just people, like you said, it's not just people learning how do I support other people, but how do I explore my own experiences, my own connections, my own thoughts about suicide. And so the training really creates safe spaces in order to do that. So Cindy, how about you? Like, what are some kind of light bulb moments or impactful experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with what Mikaela and Anne-Marie were saying about how, folks who are attending this training feel like that they've, they're able to connect with somebody else who also experiences either a loss by suicide or, personal experience or lived experience with suicide. And that connection really is powerful within the workshop. But we also have to be aware that not everybody, just because somebody attended a workshop and has that lived experience or has a loss or lives with somebody who is experiencing thoughts of suicide, or even has loved ones, family or friends or clients, even in their workplace, who has that experience, it's important to know that this is a very common experience. Many folks in society have loved ones, friends, families, or people that they work with who have experienced thoughts of suicide. And it's important to recognize that it is a common experience. And that's a light bulb moment for me when people in the training recognize that this is, we give statistics on, how common it is within society. 1 in 20 people at any given time are having thoughts of suicide, yet we know that that number is likely higher because statistics are not always accurate and people don't always report that they're having thoughts of suicide. So knowing how common it is, and also recognizing that if you are thinking about attending an ASIST training, it is a 2-day workshop where we do talk about how to do a suicide first aid intervention for somebody. And if you do have a recent loss, or if you've had personal experience or lived experience with suicide, we do recommend that you think about putting some time and space between that experience and when you attend the workshop, or consider attending a 3-hour Safe Talk workshop, which will provide you with the skills to recognize signs and symptoms of people who may be having thoughts of suicide, and know how to connect them to somebody who is ASIST trained and can provide that intervention for sure.
I think that's a really great insight as well, because ASIST is just one of the training options that are available through LivingWorks. So we will share the website for LivingWorks at the end of this webcast, and check it out, because the ASIST 2-day training is great. But if you're not quite ready for that, maybe look at a 3-hour Safe Talk, or there's even a webinar that you can take called LivingWorks Start that will help to build those skills. So, if you're not sure, give those things a try. But I know often people will be interested in taking the course, but they're not really 100% sure. I don't really speak to people who may be having thoughts of suicide very often, but often I'll share with people that the course just doesn't build skills around those conversations around suicide. It can really help you build that confidence and help prepare you to have supportive conversations about a number of different things. So I know that's something that I really like to emphasize to people who are thinking of taking the course. But again, great opportunity. So just for our last question, thank you for all of your insights. It's really great to hear about all the experiences that we've all had the privilege of being part of as trainers. But I'd love to know, what do you like best about being an ASIST trainer? We're all thinking.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It is a great question. So, I really like, I feel a huge responsibility to creating suicide safer communities. So I want as many people that I work with and encounter to be prepared to recognize somebody who might be having thoughts of suicide, and then what to do. Right. So, so I love, I primarily train within my school board, and so sharing that information and knowing that that's sort of disseminating around our community, I think is a really, I feel a huge responsibility to continue to do that. And I really, it's funny to train such a heavy course and to see that you love doing it. But I really find that it's an emotional experience every time. It's a fulfilling experience every time. And, when Mikaela and Cindy talk about sort of the connection that is developed between participants, that's a palpable kind of energy that, that I really enjoy being part of, and doing something that is so important, I think, for our community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think for me, I really love the privilege of being able to travel. Actually, I've trained all across Ontario, and many different groups, whether it's, a group of staff who work with high-risk populations within Ontario, or whether it's just a group of community members who have decided to get together and attend this training, or, I've just really love the fact that we can be so widespread, and that this training is literally for anyone, over the specific age of 16, I believe it is, and can know that those folks will have those skills and have the awareness of being able to recognize when there's a change in someone's behavior, or some signs that maybe they might be having those thoughts of suicide, and feel confident to actually ask the question and be that person's support, and be able to provide that first aid for suicide, so that that person will get the help they need in the time that they need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Really great.
Yeah, I agree with both Anne-Marie and Cindy. I think my favorite part about being a trainer is feeling like I am also making a difference in my community. I think, I'm not a social worker or counselor, so I'm just working in health promotion. And I think a lot of the time when we think about like mental health care or supporting people, a lot of that's thought about in that kind of one-on-one capacity of that type of support, which is absolutely essential. And I think it's such a difficult but fulfilling career. But I think also with the training, it's like Anne-Marie said, there's something fulfilling about the energy that comes in that space throughout and after the training. It can be, a bit draining at times to be hearing about suicide for 2 full days, but there's also that sense of, wow, like now I know that these 15 or 20 people or whatever can also contribute to making this community a safer place for people that are at risk. And as we've all said today, anybody can have thoughts of suicide, anybody can be at risk for suicide. And knowing that the taxi driver or the school teacher or the person working at Fortino's, like anybody can provide that type of intervention. And I really like being a part of that, and feeling like I've been able to make some sort of difference in my community and support somebody in their learning and in their eventual, hopefully supporting somebody else. So yeah, just seeing that community grow and the knowledge increase, and also kind of stigma being reduced at the same time. So yeah.
That's great. Great reminders to end our conversation with. So this would be great. I feel like we could talk for hours about our experiences with ASIST, but for those of you who are watching, if you're interested in taking more training, again, you can go on the LivingWorks website, which we will share at the end of the webcast episode. I work at the Canadian Mental Health Association Halton region, and we offer the ASIST course, as does CMHA Hamilton, which is who Mikaela is with. But definitely look at the LivingWorks website, look at your local CMHA to find trainings that are available near you. We talked a lot about ASIST, but also the Safe Talk training is available, as well as LivingWorks Start, which is a webinar that can be done from anywhere. So lots of options. And I mean, we've all shared how much we see the confidence of people in the room grow. So by building those skills and building that knowledge, it will help all of us feel more prepared to have these kinds of conversations and ultimately create that suicide safer community. So thank you to the three of you for being part of this conversation today. Thank you for all you do, not just as ASIST trainers, but as part of the Halton Suicide Prevention Coalition. So thanks to everyone for watching, and we will see you at our next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, everyone.